Hi, good evening, everyone. We're just going to take a couple more seconds to make sure everyone gets in from the waiting room. Good attendance. In. Hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to tonight's Racial Justice Series listening session. We're here tonight to hear from Black community members of Lowell and Lowell Public Schools. At this moment, I'm going to let everyone know that if you would like to hear Spanish, Portuguese, or Khmer, please click the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen, click the globe, and then select your language. Adriana, can you explain in Spanish?
Bienvenidos a todos y por favor pueden seleccionar a su idioma y opriman el símbolo del mundo.
Sauling?
ខ្ញុំបាទឈ្មោះ Sauling ខ្ញុំជាអ្នកបកប្រែនៅថ្ងៃនេះបើអ្នកចង់ស្ដាប់ជាភាសាខ្មែរសូមចុចប៊ូតុងនៅខាងក្រោមហ្នឹងជ្រើសរើសនឹងភាសាខ្មែរ
Boa noite a todos. Se você deseja escutar essa palestra em português, por favor, clique no globo embaixo, na parte de baixo da tela e escolha o seu idioma.
All right, I think we can begin.
Thank you. I want to begin by welcoming everyone. Good evening. Thank you for taking the time to be here with us this evening. My name is Latifa Phillips. I'm the Chief Equity and Engagement Officer. And I want to thank you and especially our panelists for being here for this important conversation tonight. This is the third series of our racial justice series. Today, we will be focusing on hearing the experiences of our Black community. And I'm very thankful to have our school committee member, Stacey Thompson, here to take us through this listening session. But I'm going to begin by asking Rosa Segarra Morales to give us some details about how the session is going to run today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Latifa. Rosa Segarra Morales, I'm a District Support Specialist for Equity and Engagement. And I am going to share my screen here. Can everyone see? Thumbs up? Perfect. As Latifa said, this is our third series in our racial justice series, and we are here to listen to members of our Black community and just to share some norms and very important that we keep to these. And if there's anyone that would like to add, please feel free to send us a chat and we can consider discussing that as well. However, at this point, we ask, our norms are that we ask questions, that we be present and be respectful. For when we have time to share out as a whole group or discuss as a whole group, we ask that everyone center themselves by speaking with I statements. Discomfort is a normal part of this process, and hearing, stories and processing and reflecting on how the world around us impacts others in different ways. It's necessary and it's okay to experience that discomfort, and it's important to lean in and into those feelings to really be able to fully understand like the impact of these things. And then expect and accept non-disclosure. We're not always going to be in agreement with some things. Some things might, again, some of the discomforts that we experience might continue beyond this session. And we are here as an equity team available to help process this with anyone if they would like to continue these discussions further. And one additional thing that is very important as we have these discussions is to ensure that we're also centering these conversations by the voices that are most impacted by racism. So when we do have an opportunity to share with the whole group, please remember, if you are not a member of that community, particularly to ensure that you are considering that when we go forward. So our objectives for today are that we are going to listen to individual experiences of members of our Black community, including parents, students, and staff. And we're going to reflect on our individual and shared experiences within the community and broader society. And we're going to explore and understand the difference and similarities as it relates to these experiences among Black members of our community. So we will begin by having some discussion with our panelists, and we will have the opportunity later on in the session to bring other voices to the table. So thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing from everyone, and excited for this session. And Stacy, if you want to take it away, we can get started. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So excited to be here. Can everyone hear me? Okay, good. So excited to be here today. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Stacy Thompson. I am the first Black woman elected to public office in the city of Lowell. I am now a school committee member. So it is an honor to be here because I am about celebrating all things Black all month long, all day long, all year long, because it's a beautiful thing. Black is beautiful is not just a slogan, it is the truth. So I'm really excited to be here today. Really excited to hear experiences, because the only way we can truly learn is to hear experiences and actually accept them as truth. Because there is something that has been happening lately that you may be seeing, that the truth has not been accepted as that. And so today you're going to hear experiences, stories from people that live among you, that have lived among you, that have experienced Lowell, but maybe in a way that is different from what you have experienced. But I want to start off with this quote from James Baldwin, and it says, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." So today we're looking to talk about racism. We're looking to talk about the Black experience, the beauty of Blackness, and all things. Towards the end of this, after the panelists do give us their wonderful thoughts and experiences, there will be an opportunity, if you choose to actually participate by just letting us know that you'd like to share or have your story heard as well. So with that, I'm going to get started. All right, I'm going to actually start off with Charlotte. Charlotte, I believe you're an educator in the city.
Yes.
And so I would love to ask you, to talk a little bit about what it is as a Black woman teaching in this city, empowering youth. Just give us a little bit about your overall experience.
Yep. I've been at my school for 4 years. I am one of few of the Black women that are there. None of us are teachers, we're pairs. I previously have taught in Lawrence as well, and taught science there. So I'm also as part of the anti-racism initiative that started last school year. And I'm continuing that with the CLSP within my school. So there's a big role that I play, I feel, and especially sharing my experiences with my staff. With staff is mostly white individuals. So it has brought up a lot of really good conversation and moving towards making that change. I think you're on
I'm gonna
mute.
come back to you in a second, Charlotte, because I want to, you brought something up that made me think about Matt. And so
Okay.
Matt, you are a graduate of the Lowell School System and are now attending a historically Black college and university, I believe. And I would love to hear your transition from Lowell, which is obviously quite different from your experience that you're having now. Give us a little bit of what it was, your experience in Lowell, and how you had to transition to where you are now.
Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Matthew Sheggett, and I'm currently a freshman computer information systems major at Howard University in Washington, D.C. And like Ms. Thompson said, I graduated from Lowell High in 2021, but I attended Lowell Public Schools K through 12. So I was in the district basically the whole time I was growing up. And coming to a school where, like majority of the students are Black, it's a historically Black college. It was definitely a different experience. I think going to Lowell Public Schools, there was always like diversity. Lowell's very diverse. I wouldn't say I was ever like the only Black person in my class. I'd usually maybe have like one or two other classmates in whatever class I was in that were also Black. But I think just when it came to just like the educators, that's where I saw the biggest change. K through 12, a lot of my teachers were just not Black. I think the first Black teacher I had was in 6th grade, and he was actually, he was a substitute because my teacher was on pregnancy leave. So he was only there for a couple months, but I think that experience it was very eye-opening for me and exciting to see that, I could be in that position one day, and just having like a Black male being my teacher was just something that shocked me. And he was the only Black teacher that I ever had. So I think from there on, I just got really interested in HBCUs actually. I wanted to go to one since I was a freshman. So that was like my end goal. In high school, I'd wear a Howard sweater. So I always knew it's where I wanted to end up. And I think the transition from Lowell to just DC in general, I'd say they're actually pretty similar cities. DC is very diverse too. The main difference, I guess, that I noticed was just the hubs of different communities that DC has. In Lowell, I feel like it's very mixed. But in DC, there's like, neighborhoods which are predominantly Black, and then obviously those that are predominantly white, and then they have predominantly Hispanic neighborhoods. But yeah, those are the main differences that I've like encountered so far in the time that I've been here. But I definitely think coming from Lowell honestly has prepared me to come to the current school that I'm attending.
Excellent. We have to make sure that we are keeping our interpreters in mind when we're talking, because I'm a fast talker as well. So we just have to make sure that everyone can hear the richness of what we're talking about. So going back to Charlotte, hearing Matt's experience, what do you feel equipped to prepare our Black students to go to college? Do you feel like you're having an impact? How does that make you feel, what he's kind of the experience that he had of not having a Black teacher until 6th grade, and that was only a substitute, and then having the experience, in college?
Yeah, so I also only had one Black teacher, and that was in 12th grade. So working here now, I do feel there's connections that I can make with the students. My belief for them is I want to give them the option. So in middle school, I want to give them the option to be able to go to the college of their choice. I myself, I lived in Lawrence, Revere, and Boston Public School. And when I moved from Revere High to, which is a lot like Lowell, to a Boston high school, I saw the difference within the teaching there. And I saw the apathy towards a lot of the student achievement. And that's why I first got into teaching, because as being one of the only Black students most of the time, I didn't have the experience of having a female Black teacher until I was in college. So that's something I wanted to do, so I'm able to connect with those students. The pandemic year had actually had smaller class sizes, and there were a couple of Black students there that I definitely made connections with. So yeah, my overall goal is to give them the option, the confidence that they need, and to understand. Like I said, I was working with the CLSP, and one of the things that we are thinking about going on for a subject is teaching code switching. And I think that's an important concept for the Black community. Some people will already know by middle school, not everybody does though.
Can you tell everybody what the CLSP, because you said it twice, so they may not know. I know what it is, but they may not.
The culturally linguistic sustainable practices, which stemmed from before when I was working with other teachers on the anti-racism training that we previously did.
Excellent. So I'm going to pull Natasha into this conversation. Natasha,
yes,
being a Black woman in Lowell, what has been your overall experience? And I believe, did you also go to the Lowell public school system?
I did not, but I had 4 children who did go through the Lowell public school system, 1 who is still there, 3 who have gone through and have gone on.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, could you repeat your question?
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you see as, and this is a perfect segue actually, because you're going from a teacher to you who has had 4 children, 1 who's currently still in the system. What do you think it is to, in Lowell, be a Black young person? What is the experience? Maybe speaking towards some of the situations or experiences your children have had in the school system.
As far as the school system goes, I think it can be trying, to be honest with you. As a mom of Black children who went through the Lowell public school system, I know that there were a couple of times where there were some racial incidents that came up, and the way that they were addressed, I almost felt like they didn't always take them seriously, and that bothered me because. For several reasons, because like one of the times, I'm just going to give that instance, my son was called the N-word, and he came home and he was upset, and it took him a while to tell me because he had went to the administration and he had asked them to handle the situation, and it took 2 weeks before it got back to me, and he came home upset because he had gone to them and said, this is still going on. Nobody's done anything. And they told him it was under investigation. So I called up to the school. And when I called up to the school, the principal at that school said to me, well, we don't know if it was with the GA or the ER. And as a mother, my response was, well, we don't use that word in my household, so it doesn't matter to me which way it was used. If my son was upset about it, it needed to be addressed. So that was kind of painful, and that happened more than once. So, and just the fact that I don't think they really knew how to handle that situation. And then the way that it was treated was like, oh, well, it wasn't used as a term of endearment or not. But from my point of view, if my son felt upset about it, it probably wasn't used in that way, and it should have been taken more seriously. So if I speak on that instance, that was very upsetting. And like I said, I had 4 children who go through it. 3 of them had that kind of experience, and they didn't all go to the same school.
So how, kind of stemming from that, how does that, or how have you been able to navigate that with your children? Because obviously your goal and your job as mom is to empower them to, be able to move forward. And, as a Black person navigating the world in general, there's a lot that's weighed on you. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that. 1, because it's not lived experience. 2, because quite frankly, unfortunately, not everybody cares to know because it's not something that they're experiencing. So what have you been able to do, or, what areas do you think that, Lowell could, be able to do things better? Have you thought of anything that could help?
I think knowledge is power, and just being empathetic would definitely be helpful. I think it's a touchy situation for a lot of people. It's uncomfortable. And I remember I didn't grow up in the city of Lowell. I grew up in Tewksbury. So my growing up was very different. I was one of the only Black children in the town that I grew up in. So I had to deal with a lot of that. And I think because I had to deal with a lot of that, I was maybe more prepared to explain to my children, you know, and the simple fact is there's ignorance out there. And on some level, I had to just talk to them about understanding who they were and understanding the limitations of where the school was seeing things from. And just trying to navigate him through their feelings about that. And then I did actually talk to the school as well about, you know, if a child comes to you and they are upset, the odds of it being a term of endearment was probably less likely. And that his emotions and the way that he felt about that was valid and it needed to be taken seriously. So I just tried to validate how my children feel. And we talk a lot about race, especially in this day and age and the climate. And I have 2 Black sons. So it is it's very important to me to make sure that they have a voice, but not only just have a voice, but understand who they are and where they come from. And sometimes I don't know that that's always, it's hard because, you know, I also used to work for the little public schools and there's not a lot of Black staffs. A lot of the times I was the only one in the building as well. So when I was listening to Shalat, I hope I said her name right, but I could relate to that because a lot of the times I was the only Black female in the building or one of the only Black people, period. So it's just, I always just tried to make them understand where they're coming from, listen, and validate the way that they're feeling about a situation and actually hear them out.
Yeah, that's tough. Natasha, I actually relate to a lot of what you said. I grew up in Billerica. So you know that there was just me and my sister in school at the same time. And so I was grateful that she was 2 years younger because I would see a Black person at some point during the day. And my mom was a teacher for 45 years, 38, I think of those years were in, or maybe more than that, were in Billerica, where she was the only Black woman teaching in the entire district. So, or about Black person, actually, I should say. So it is very challenging. One of the things that you said really resonated with me, and I mentioned it at the beginning. When someone gives you an experience, there's no reason for them to be lying about their experience. And I think that there's this assumption that there's exaggeration or, you know, it's often seemingly, and I've had this experience multiple times personally, where people have, you know, because I do drama, I didn't mention that, but I do plays. And so people will have called me dramatic, right? If I'm not on stage, my experience is quite honestly my experience. So it's not, and so thank you for sharing those things, because I think that it's important for people, and I know it feels repetitious to some of you, but again, it's not from the same people. The experiences, the fact that they are repeated and from different people should be letting people understand that it is something that really needs to be discussed. It is something that needs to be talked about. You know, a lot of suffering in silence happens. And that's tough. That's tough when you try to be a professional and go to work and you have all this stuff on you. And if you're, you know, a young person and you're going and you're trying to gain knowledge and, you know, you don't have somebody who looks like you ever. I never had a Black teacher until college.
Me
ever.
too.
So I never saw a Black teacher. And I remember the first one, I was like, oh my gosh, finally. Right. So I never had that experience. And so
Stacey, could I say one thing? Because the one thing, there's one that, because we're talking about not having a Black teacher until we're older, a lot of us. I remember there's one experience that when we said this, every time it's come up, it just pops in my head. I remember we had a professional development one time. And there was a lady who came and we were talking about racial identity and how we identify. And I remember one of the staff members stood up and was like, well, one of the things in my school, I feel like I'm in the minority, she said. And this is a white woman. And she said, because our school is very diverse and her classroom was made up of majority children of color. And she said, and I just don't know how, for the first time in my life, I'm feeling like I'm in the minority. And I'm not sure that I can relate to my students. And I remember thinking back, like, as I'm listening to her here say that comment, what she doesn't realize is that you're the norm for us in the front of a classroom. And that a lot of the times we don't even think about it because we're used to seeing it. It's more rare for us to see one of us in front of the classroom. And I remember actually having that conversation later, like I thought, I really did. I had to take it back and look and think back on my childhood all the way through college. And I literally said, the first time I saw a Black teacher was when I got to college. It was a Black female, and that was the first one I had ever seen in my whole educational career. So it was just, to hear her perspective, it was eye-opening to me, because for me, it was like, that's the norm for us. And on the other side, she was like, how do I relate to these kids? And in my head, I'm thinking, how are you, if that's what you're thinking when you're in front of the room, you can't.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. There were definitely no lies told in what you just said. So I entirely agree with you. I want to go back to Matt really quickly, because I'm wondering, Matt, when did you feel like you could be your full self? So in Lowell, as you existed in Lowell and you went through the educational system in Lowell and had friends and, did whatever you did as a citizen of Lowell, when did you feel seen fully as who you are in Lowell? Do you feel seen now? And explain that.
I think growing up, I didn't necessarily feel very seen. There weren't like conversations such as the conversation we're having now. So I guess growing up, I just kind of felt like a character in the background. There wasn't events like this going on regarding Black History Month. And if Black History Month was talked about in school, it was talked about for about a day. So there just wasn't much of any of this going on. So I'd say when I really started to feel seen was honestly when I started attending Lowell High, when I joined the Black Unity Club my freshman year, and I also joined the STEP team. I think that's when I really started to feel seen, because I remember the STEP team would perform at the city of Lowell's Black History Month flag raising outside City Hall. So we'd have to go, and I guess like seeing the flag being raised and hearing all of these citizens, the Black citizens of Lowell, just talking about their experiences and what it is to be Black in Lowell, I think that's when I really started to feel seen. And then also having like safe spaces such as the Black Unity Club, which Miss Laughlin still runs, and just having the opportunity to have conversations with other Black students at Lowell High and getting to discuss what we go through and different improvements we think that they could make. And then just seeing the improvements that they're making. Like if I'm not wrong, I'm pretty sure Lowell High this year introduced the African American literature course. And they also had a course regarding, I believe it was a race in America. And I took it my senior year, my last year. So just having like opportunities like this, I think it's really good to see, like, even though I'm not there, because I know that Black students who are currently in the Lowell public school system, hopefully they feel like they're being seen, and I think they are starting to be seen. Obviously, there's still a lot more that can be done, but I definitely think things like this are a huge stepping stone to making sure that all Black students and students of color feel seen.
Thank you for that. I think that's a really important thing. And for those of you who are wondering when I say being seen, because you might be like, what is she talking about? Obviously, physically we can see one another, but being seen means being able to walk into a space as your full, authentic, real self. Not having to, as I think Charlotte mentioned, code switch, which is something we all learn to do. It's not even something that's really taught to you. It's just something you observe over time. But there's definitely an art to code switching. But I think somebody asked what that was, Charlotte. So I'm gonna turn that back to you. Can you answer what that is and why you think it's an important thing for you to be teaching?
The best way I can explain it is you're kind of split between two different types of worlds. And when you're code switching, you're going back and forth between those two. For me, it was being, with my family, and there's certain ways of acting and things that you're doing that are going to be different from when you're hanging out, when you're in an environment, especially when you're the only Black one there. So that's important to be able to teach that, and to have kids understand that just because their speech is different doesn't mean it's wrong. There's still certain rules that go with speech that is not the typical ELA type of speech. So that's what they need to help have those choices that they need. So having them understand that, and just being able to go back and forth between the two kind of worlds that you're in is exhausting for one thing. And but it's something that's definitely either seen or taught, like, to the Black children.
So what would you say, and I'm going to do a pushback on you just because I'm curious as to what you will say on this, but what will you say to someone who says there's only one world? What do you mean going between two worlds? There's one world, we're one people. So why this need for this different thing?
Why the need for
code switching? Because there's only one world, right? So why would that need persist?
So I'm not entirely sure I'm going to answer this fully, but the need for you to be able to interact on a level that you're comfortable with other individuals who are like you, versus a situation where it's you speaking your proper English, and like a lot of things that can differentiate you from the crowd that you get aware of, because you want to blend in with that crowd, but at the same time you want to be able to blend in with this other world, or this other way of thinking and just being.
You presented it well. The reality of it is I've had that conversation with people who have given me that exact pushback on why the need for it. And I saw Natasha unmute herself. I don't know if you had something to add to
too well. I feel like a lot of the times, like when Black is put under this one umbrella, right? Like what I feel like people fail to understand is that the Black experience is different, just like everybody else's experience is different. And a lot of the times it's like this stereotype and we all fall underneath the same umbrella. And that's not true. So like for me, especially where I grew up in a predominantly white suburban area, I remember people saying to me, "My name's Natasha. That's not a Black name." Like, what? I remember, "Why do you speak this way? You dress a certain way. You don't dress Black. You don't, you speak so proper." And I remember thinking to myself, I came from the Midwest, and everywhere I lived, everybody Black that I knew spoke and acted and talked and dressed like me. So I actually grew up feeling bad for people who thought that way. But at the same time, I also understood the need, because I could go back to the city where we came from in the Midwest, and I wasn't Black enough either. So it was, I had to do a lot of that code switching between and trying to fit in both ways. And it's exhausting. It is mentally exhausting. And depending on culture wise, you want to fit in with the American culture, you want to fit in with your culture back at home. You want to fit in with, being an inner city kid or the kid from the suburbs. It depends. To work, you can't speak a certain way. It's a constant thing. And I think people don't understand it when it comes, because Black comes with a very big stereotype. And when we don't fit that mold, it tends to, there's a surprise to it. And it's maddening, actually. But at the same time, that's where the code switching comes from. And to say that there's only one world when they know that that's not true is also upsetting.
I totally agree with you. I was literally listening to as you were speaking, and you said your name is Natasha, and that doesn't sound Black. Well, Stacy clearly does not sound like a Black girl.
Right.
And my mom was really, really actually particular when she named us all, because she recognized race was an issue for people and culture on top of that. My father's from the islands. So my father's from Barbados. So if you hear me talking to my relatives, you would probably think I'm speaking another language, even though it is English, but that Bajan accent is real.
Right.
So you have that experience on top of, you know, I hear often, Stacey, you're so well spoken. And I say, wow, a lot of Black people are.
Right.
You know, so the reality of it is, I think sometimes people say it as if it were a compliment. And I'm like, you know what? There's intellectual people in all races. Join the, you know, the conversation and recognize that, you know, there are people that are really intelligent and really in every race, you know, so that's just the reality of it.
Yes.
So I'm going to go back to Matt with a question. Matt, you know, you're the black male perspective in this conversation, so I'm about to put, you know, some heaviness on you because I feel like that's what happens anyways. What do you think, or what would you like for people to know about what it is to be a Black man in this current climate?
I think that in the current climate, being a Black man is very difficult. Being Black in general is very difficult, but especially being a Black man, I think there's just so many different layers that comes with being a Black man, especially with the stereotype, strong Black man, being aggressive, being dangerous, just all of these just different things which you have to think about, and then, you know, your parents are thinking about, and it just feels like it's constantly just all in your head, and it's kind of all that you can think about, and you kind of feel like you don't have much you can amount to, that you'll never, like, I guess, beat these stereotypes. And I think it was definitely, for me, it was difficult, I think, just like trying to, I guess, balance everything. I think even while I was in school, going through the school system, once I got to high school, I took a lot of like accelerated classes, honors, high honors, AP, dual enrollment. And usually I was like the only Black male in those classes. And honestly, sometimes I would walk in and automatically just feel like the teacher wasn't expecting much from me. Like they weren't expecting I would perform well. I'd probably drop the class, go to another level, because usually, you know, they wouldn't necessarily see, they would see maybe a Black woman in those classes, but to see like a Black man, I feel like sometimes they'd be taken back or kind of question how I got into the class, how I was placed there, if I'm even gonna pass the class. So I think just, you know, trying to like still push myself despite all of these things going on, different things people are saying, different things I'd hear, and just, I guess, really trying to just mute them all out and focus on myself, while still trying to honestly like be an example for like other Black men. I have a lot of like younger male cousins, so trying to like be an example for them and show them that, you know, don't listen to what other people are saying, because my male cousins, they go to school in Chelmsford, which is a very, very white district. So I know it's very difficult for them, very difficult for them. So just trying to like tell them to just really focus on themselves, prove them wrong, and just if they put their mind to what they want to achieve, they can really achieve it. Because honestly, at the end of the day, there's going to be a lot of things said about just Black people in general. However, you can't let those things hinder you. You have to work, I don't want to say work with them, but just actively work towards what you want and prove them wrong.
That's really, that's a lot. And the reason why I asked you that question is because I don't think people are necessarily aware that you have all of that and then you go to class. You have to wear all that with you every day. You don't get to put it down. Charlotte, I was curious how it was to be, and I'm assuming you were in class during the time of George Floyd's murder. I'm curious to what the way you navigated that time frame with the Black students and with the rest of the student population as people were going through that. It was a really tumultuous time and really hard for people to even wrap their mind around. So how was it for you to navigate that, being, you know, somebody that's they're looking to for something?
Yeah. So when that was happening, I think we were actually already started with the pandemic. So I don't think I had as much interaction with students as I normally would. I did during that time do a lot of protesting, some with former students that I've had previously. And but as far as like that specific event, I could probably comment better on January 6th in those events. If you, okay. So during that time of the January 6th, we had a conversation. We read an article about it and had conversations about this event, what it really meant to them. And as the Black teacher of being involved with that, I did have students who said things that were a little disappointing to hear as far as their progress, as far as understanding why this was something that's important that happened, and it's not just something to laugh off. So I think in that instance, it was something that I worked with other teachers with and talking to them and getting at least a conversation with the students about specifically what happened and having them have a space to be able to talk freely about it. Most of this was done on through Zoom. So the instance of like having to bring a student aside and talk to them was a little bit easier during that time. But it was definitely eye-opening for me, because I also realized there's work that has to be done as far as educating the teachers and educating the students and all of the students, and also understanding that they're going to have their parents' influence with them as they carry themselves through school, and what that means in terms of them being able to think freely and openly and unbiasedly about topics that are happening, like George Floyd and the Capitol takeover.
Thank you. That's, you know, the Capitol takeover was really interesting because it became a really divisive situation because people were looking at it from race, the racial tenor of it as well, you know, because I've, you know, had many people who said to me, Stacey, what would that have looked like if it were Black and brown people that had done the same thing? And so that was a really interesting question or interesting conversation that was allowed to happen from that as well. Natasha, I'm curious for you, you know, for yourself, how you navigated that and having children, how they were able to get through that period of time. What has it meant for them? And how have you navigated that?
George Floyd?
The George Floyd murder, and just like, I mean, he's not the first. And so it's clearly that he was a spark for so many people. So I use that for that in that case. Obviously, I mean, I could name, which is unfortunate, name names for forever, and many have happened since his murder. But I was just curious as to that.
For me, I think, and I'm going to go back a little bit, I have been in fear constantly since Trayvon Martin.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 Black sons, you know, and I worry about them every single day. And to have to, and I don't think people understand, like, at some point, my boys go from being adorable and cute to threats, to aggressive, and they're none of those things. But because of the color of their skin, that's what they become, because that's what society has labeled them. And so I have shed more tears for children and men that I have never met before in my life. And I live in, that's the fear of a Black mother, is of boys, period. I mean, we fear for our daughters, but it's way different. My daughters are my 2 oldest and my sons are my 2 youngest. And after the reality set in, when I had 2 Black boys, that just what they're up against, being Black in America. So George Floyd was, I think by that time, at that point, I'm kind of over it. Like, and unfortunately, you can never really be over it, but it was just like, not again. And when does it stop? And how long until I have to worry about that being my child? And to have that conversation with my boys, to think that the person who's sworn to protect you can be the person who's going to take your life, is a real reality for them. And it's a real reality for me.
Una realidad real para mí.
I'm sorry.
We just had our Spanish interpreter rejoin.
Oh, okay. And
My apologies.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, no. So it's hard, and I constantly, we have those conversations, and you know, it's sometimes I remember my older son was like, well, this George Floyd thing, it's going to change things. And I said, you know, I'm hopeful, but I've been on this earth a little bit longer than you. And I know that it would be nice for it to see real change happen. And I think it has sparked some conversations, but those conversations tend to get muddied, and other things seem to take a more pressing role. And I've never quite understood why that is. But I always, you know, I am hopeful, and we do have to have those conversations all the time. Actually, we had to have the conversation again recently because of another recent incident that happened. But those conversations are tough. They're tough to have. And like I said, as a mother of 2 Black boys, you worry about it every single day. You don't know when it's going to be, or if it will ever be your child, and you just have to hope that it doesn't.
Yeah, I don't have kids, but my nephew, I was petrified for him to go anywhere because he was a hoodie wearing kid, like every other kid. And, you know, I had to like literally sit down with my sister and have a conversation about, you know, not looking intimidating. If you ever met him, he's like pencil thin. Like, totally,
my son too.
Totally not intimidating, like always just chill. But again, it's not even that there's anything that's done, because it's not rational, right? But the reality for young Black men is that this is a real thing that they have to live through. And it's something that I remember asking a former coworker of mine who's white, and, you know, asking her, you know, have you ever feared for your son's life just because he left the house for a moment? And she was like, no. So, you know, that's just a very different added pressure, an added thing on top of everything else. That is a very daily lived experience. And so for me, and I appreciate you sharing that, for me, it's so important for people to hear these things, because they make them, you know, a political thing or something other than it really is. It's just lived experience that this happens in. I was curious for you, Natasha, do you feel that there is, and I know you spoke to this a little bit, but do you feel like there is something that could be done to continue the shift? Because I know that you said that it happens for a little while and then it kind of quiets down, which I feel right now we're in that space, right? Where George Floyd died a couple of years ago, there were rallies and people protested and everybody was kumbaya. And now we're in a space where I feel like people are kind of about it. So is there something that could or should be done to make sure that these conversations, real conversations, happen, real action is taken?
For me, I think, and it's funny because where I work now, we just went through this racial identity training, and I remember saying, it's time to rip the Band-Aid off, right? We have to have, they're tough conversations to have. It's not, I don't feel that it is our job necessarily to educate others, but at the same time, we do have some type of responsibility in that, right? I think that it's time to have those tough conversations, and they are tough to have, but it's more about listen. You're not going to change anybody's mind off the bat. That's something that has to come from that person. But at the same time, having that conversation and being willing to listen is where it starts. And we can't just the work has to continue. It's like the work continues. There's the rallies, there's the riots, and why they do that, and they did this. And then there's a whole lot of other conversations that come out of hurt. right? All of those things that happen, that's because there's hurt and there's no change. And, you know, I think for the first time we saw some type of real consequence behind an officer's actions in that one. And as crazy as it was a win, even though it took somebody's life to be lost. And I feel like, yes, like you said, we had those conversations and now everything's kind of toned down until the next one. And then that's when we realized that, you know what, the change isn't big enough. And I feel like if we just continue to have those conversations and really push to have those conversations, maybe we could get somewhere. But, you know, that's a big hill to climb, a mountain.
I'm glad you changed it from a hill to a mountain, because I agree.
Like,
I agree with you
mountain.
on that one.
Yeah.
Charlotte, how do you feel, or what do you feel needs to be done to get our youth to feel like their voice is being heard? I've talked to a lot of students, and you know, a lot of them were very angry, and a lot of them didn't really know what to do. They wanted to do something, but didn't really know what to do. And they wanted people to listen. And I love that this dialogue is called Listen, Learn, and Then Act, because acting is what people want to do, right? You just want to hurry up and get something done, but you have to listen first to these experiences, learn from them, and then educate yourself, as Natasha just spoke about, and then you can act. But what do you feel like, you know, can be done to increase the feeling of Black voices, or youth voices in general?
Tough one. As far as like conversations going and pushing people to think in other ways that they're not accustomed to, especially after they've had years of their experience and their experience to the Black community, and using only that experience to validate their thinking. And I do want to mention something, and I know it might be a little off towards different for what your question was, but I did recently have a conversation with one of my other coworkers about what we had talked about in a session previously, and we were talking about racism and how microaggressions can lead towards other things, and microaggressions are little things that I think we said earlier, like that seem like compliments, but they're not really compliments. So you speak very well, and it's unexpected of you, basically. So I actually had a conversation with the coworker, and in her background, and as far as her understanding my background, so it was unfortunate that we couldn't continue the conversation, but it was a conversation which she said that other white people are experiencing racism, and kind of that comparing that to the Black individual. So a big fold for me is not only educating the Black children that need to know this, but also the white teachers that don't really see and listen actively. And that's one thing that I got from that conversation, as far as knowing how to listen actively. And that's one of the reasons I'm here, is so some other people can just maybe think about things a different way and build upon that. And as far as change, I agree with Natasha, like it's a mountain. And I feel as if the little things of educating youth, especially because they aren't as molded in their thoughts as we adults are, and getting them, push them into maybe uncomfortable conversations and how to do that. And you'd also have to, dealing with the community as well as the people within there, because there's only so much that you can control in the classroom. So within the classroom, hopefully those things that they take with them and bring them to other aspects of their lives.
That's really important. Matt, I'm curious, and you may have heard this in listening to Charlotte, and both Charlotte and Natasha. It's an uphill battle, right? It's getting people to look at racism, because first of all, what I've noted is as soon as you say racism, immediately it evokes a reaction, right? Because people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to be considered a racist. They don't want to, that's a tough conversation alone. But how do you as a young person not get cynical about the movement that needs to happen for change to happen? How do you stay encouraged? Or is it challenging for you to stay encouraged?
I think that it can be challenging to stay encouraged. Like they were speaking about before Natasha and Charlotte, when these different instances keep happening, black men dying at the hands of, brutal police practices, and it's happening every so often, every couple years. Honestly, I feel like we could argue that there's like an instance almost every day, but some of them we just don't hear about. It gets really tiring, and you do start to sit back and just wonder, when are we ever truly going to see a change? Like all of these, one big instance happens and there's all these conversations, and then like they were speaking about before, they kind of just fade into the background, or something else takes more precedence over the conversation. So the conversation goes on for about a couple months after, and then everyone just kind of forgets and we move on. Like with the George Floyd situation, we saw like, the performative, everyone was posting like a black box, and just all of these actions that people just do and then just move on from. So I think as a young person, it can be very hard to stay encouraged and motivated and just to hope for a change. But I think, just like I said before, like just conversations like this are just so important to see that the community that you're being educated in, the community that you've grown up in, the community that you're living in and you may live in for the rest of your life if you choose to do so, actually cares and is having conversations like this to instill hope back not only into you, but into the community as a whole. And I think that's really where I think the youth can start to find hope and courage, is honestly just through the community, through community members. And I think another place that they can find hope, honestly, is through the education system, just making sure that, the teachers are not all of the same race, that they have different teachers who are the same race as them, that they can go to if they have a concern, or if they're angry, or if they had some situation happen to them that made them feel uncomfortable, or it was a racist encounter, whatever it is that they may just feel uncomfortable about, having someone who they can go to speak about the situation to. And then I think from there, that makes them feel hopeful, because they know that someone's on their side, someone cares, and someone understands. And then just the fact that there are more teachers who look like them, they start to think, okay, a change is coming. Like everything isn't staying the same. Things can actually change. So I think that's where we can start to instill back hope into the youth, personally. And I think that honestly, it is starting to be done.
Thank you, Matt. I needed to hear that, to be honest with you, because I will tell you, there are days, which is why I ran. I ran for my position for that very reason, to instill hope, to make sure that Black people saw somebody who was willing to put themselves out there, to make sure that we're not forgotten in the landscape of what happens politically. I think it's really important. But one thing I would add to what you said, Matt, which was all fantastic, is we have to look at the curriculum that is, taught. In school, when I learned about Black History Month, or Black people in general, it was like Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King Jr., Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman. I call them like the big five, right?
Yeah.
That's basically what you learn. And I'm like, I was telling people, if you stopped at a stoplight just now, a Black person did that. If your heart got fixed, we worked on that. The filament that Thomas Edison used, Black person invented that. But you don't hear those things because that's not, there's still not the feeling that Black history is American history. And that's part of, an ongoing issue. I see Natasha unmuted herself. Would you like to add?
No, I know you said it. like you said it, I was thinking about like Henrietta Lack and
Oh yeah,
her
absolutely.
worldwide contribution. That how long did it take for us to find out about? There's just so many, and it's glazed over. Like it's sad, and it's crazy because Black history is American history, and until we start seeing it that way, it's really hard to make those changes. We were here at the foundation as well.
Absolutely.
And I think people they want to forget that we were here. We were here. Our ancestors were here. We had everything to do with this country being built. A lot of it was built off our backs.
Absolutely. The opportunities that are here and that exist and do continue to grow are off the backs of people that look like us. So absolutely, it's important to make sure that that never dies down in the conversation. And I know for some people that's uncomfortable, but the truth is the truth. And unfortunately, sometimes that just makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I saw that Miss Phillips had raised her hand. So I'm going to pivot to her.
Actually, I was testing the equipment. I wasn't sure.
Okay.
but
I thought you had something to add.
I do. I've been trying to listen here, and everything that you're expressing is from top to bottom. It's funny. I think about my family, and when they call me, they'll say, "Oh, you must be at work. You're using your work voice." But there's nothing unprofessional about my other voice, but for some reason, there is a feeling of, let me make sure that I am not being, intimidating to others or making people comfortable so that you can hear me and we can get work done. Because if you perceive me as different, then there's that automatic wall that we now have to get over just to get to the work together. So I really appreciate hearing from all of you, and hope that I can hold myself accountable and our system accountable for some of the changes that need to happen, which are not easy. And I am so thankful, Charlotte. I know you have been in this work, just doing it with or without, support from Central. You do it, because you're a teacher and you're there with the kids every day. And so I want you to know that that is seen, and that we appreciate you. So thank you for that.
That is absolutely so important to note that. And it's funny, I've been taking a couple little notes just so I can come back. And I noted that you were like, I'm doing the CLSP. And I'm like, wait a minute, are we doing that now? But again, you're already doing it because it's needed. It's not about, and that's the thing about, Black people as a whole. We've just done things because they had to get done. Like we didn't do them because, somebody's going to give us a stamp of approval or like, a pat on the back. It just was. And it was survival. But we're at the point where we don't want to just survive. We want to thrive. I think that that's where we're at. We've had to survive for so long and our ancestors suffered and people are continuing to suffer, but we're trying to move forward in a thrive mentality. But I do appreciate, Charlotte, what you're doing because it's so, so vital. It's so crucial to have people there that are willing to, do the extra. My mom was that same person. She didn't care. She was like, I have to do it. That for her, it was the first Black person they've ever seen in life. So for her, like just even being there was a huge situation. So I see you unmuted yourself. I'd love to let you share.
Oh, so when you guys were talking about Black in America, I just had a really quick story that can kind of sum up a lot of realizations that I've had afterwards. So back when I was in college, I went overseas to England, and I got off the plane. It was the first time that I had even been on a plane, and we had to fill out the cards giving our information. So I had the pencil, and there was somebody waiting behind me who wanted to use the pencil as well. And as I was writing, she leans over and she says, "Oh, you're not Black, you're American," because I had wrote Black in my ethnicity. And from that moment, it kind of struck me of, in America, I feel more Black than American. And that's not because of any other reason other than what others have built upon me, especially being in an environment where I'm the only Black one there. I've always identified Black first, then American. And and that time I'm like, no, I am American, and my ancestors did help build this country, and I should be able to be called American first. Maybe one day that will happen.
So true. I have one question. I don't know if there's anybody who wanted to share. I haven't seen anybody say if they wanted to share or not.
I think we did have a hand raised from Keisha a while ago.
Excellent. Come on in. The water's warm.
Keisha, do you wanna chat or raise your hand if you still have the piece you wanted to share? She might not be present right now.
I'm like, did I scare Keisha? I hope not. Matt, I'm sorry. One of the things that I'm curious about is why you wanted to go to an HBCU. So you said from the very beginning, it was kind of freshman year, you were ready. And I actually wanted to go to one as well, but I did not go to one. So I was just curious what made you make that decision.
Yeah, so for me, actually, the first time I heard about an HBCU was through my older sister. She graduated from Lowell High in 2012, and she really wanted to go to Howard, actually. But at the time, just the finances and how much it would cost for my family, it just didn't work out. So she ended up having to go to a school in state. She went to UMass Boston. So I think when she was applying to colleges, I was in 4th grade. But I was in elementary school. I wasn't thinking that far ahead. I was like, don't really care, not interested in that. But once I kind of got to middle school, I was kind of, I don't know, I started thinking about college really early. I feel like for my age, I was honestly thinking about college starting like 8th grade. So once I got to 9th grade, I kind of already knew. I like had my list for the most part. I was like, this is where I'm going to apply, but I really want to go to Howard. And I think I did a lot of research on like so many different institutions. And for me, it was really just like the family aspect and just all of the great, like the Black excellence Howard has produced in general, not only just Howard, but just HBCUs in general. Just scrolling through their alumni list and seeing like all of these amazing people they've created. Chadwick Boseman, Kamala Harris graduated from Howard, Taraji P. Henson, Common, just all of these amazing Black people who all attended HBCUs. And then just seeing that was just so inspirational. And I just felt like for them to just produce so many like Black graduates when Black people are least likely to graduate is just so like, it was like magic to me. Like it really captured me, honestly. And I just felt like with their resources and them just being dedicated to providing an education to, Black people, it would just help me so much. Like honestly, just help me become great and become one of the great alumni that they produce year after year after year. So I think that's really what drew me towards attending an HBCU. And then just coming here and then experiencing the family aspect and going to one of Howard's football games, and Kamala Harris was there and she did the coin toss, and then just all of the traditions it just feels like honestly like a second home. Like it's really comforting, it's warm. Just having Black faculty, staff everywhere, your peers, it's just one of the best experiences I've had, and I'm very grateful that I've been able to have it. And just also experiencing, I know we were talking about earlier how Blackness isn't just one thing. So getting to experience all different types of Blackness, people from states you thought Black people didn't come from, Nebraska, Idaho, and then also having the international African students, people from Germany, people from the Caribbean, literally people from everywhere, and just seeing all these different forms of Blackness and how we're all different, but we can all exist in harmony and all root for each other and all just be one and have that one common thing is just really amazing to experience.
Matt, I have to say, I think you're on your way. you're talking about being one of the Black. I think you're pretty excellent already, but I think that you are definitely on your way. You have something about you that's going to propel you forward. So I look forward to hearing in 4 years, you know, what your story is. So I'm excited about that.
Thank you.
Oh, somebody said, you know, HU, you know. All right, I don't know if there was anybody else that was there. If not, I do have one follow-up question for Charlotte. Charlotte, what is the importance of Black History Month? What do you feel is the importance of Black History Month? Is it just, you know, for lack of better terms, a checkbox thing? Is it, you know, do you feel like there's something that people need to be able to take away from it? What do you personally feel the importance of Black History Month is? And I saw she took her camera. Oh, she's back. You're
Sorry
muted.
about that. That was my internet.
That's okay. That's okay. Mine's wonky too. So yes, did you hear my question, Charlotte? Okay. Basically, I was asking, what do you think the importance of Black History Month is? Because I feel like for some people it becomes a checkbox. Like, okay, we went over some things about Black people, we're done. What do you think is the importance of it in the current curriculum and things of that nature?
I feel it is something that is done not always for the most benefit of the students, and there's a lot of, you know, through me schooling and learning, you know, the basics, I would say, like you said, the top 5. I think it's still important that we do have a Black History Month, because that's literally sometimes the only time that someone who's not Black would at least get some exposure to that. I feel like most of the Black history I learned was in college, and a lot of things that are built on today. So Black history, it's history, but we're still in the midst of it, and we're still trying to make history as far as getting rid of this system that was designed to make us not succeed. So my favorite month is definitely Black History Month, and reaching out to the kids. It kind of just gives them that is what there is, but there is also every other month that we can do the same thing and embed that. So ways of embedding it into our curriculum, or whether it be like a shorter conversation. I think like there was when the riots were going on, it was a current situation. We were able to address it then and not have to wait till Black History Month, but we can see how it is great that we have that, but it should be all the time. And we've built so much of America, and that should be noted throughout the year.
Absolutely. Thank you. Natasha, same question. What do you think the importance of, you know, for some people that don't know, by the way, Black History Month was a week and is now a month. But what do you think the importance of it? How could we utilize it, maybe the time differently, or should we utilize it differently? What do you think?
Well, for me, like I said before, Black history is American history. So when I think back on, especially for me, when I think back on my childhood and my education, like you said, the top 5 were and even it wasn't even 5 back then that we learned about. So it took me to become an adult to learn just how much history is built in Black history. So it's very important. And I go above and beyond to try and find out about as much outside of Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks and the top 5. I actually actively look for the other Blacks who had impact. And I try and remember that. And it also helps me remember who we are. We're more than just a stereotype. And that's what Black history means to me. And it's like I said, Black history is American history. And I truly, I will live and die on that now. So it means it's a staple for me now.
Absolutely. I think it's so important. And then Matt, I'm going to ask you the same question. What do you think the importance of it is? And I'm curious also where you are currently. How is it being celebrated at a historically Black college? Have you noted the vast differences between what you saw in Lowell as to what you're experiencing now?
Yeah, so I'd say honestly, like being at an HBCU, it feels like it's always like Black History Month. Like every day Black history is celebrated. Every day, you know, at 6 p.m. they just played Lift Every Voice and Sing at the main clock tower. They have a bell. So there's that, which makes you just feel very proud to be Black in general. And then also today we got like an email sent out saying that a graduating senior is a Marshall Scholar, I believe, and it's the fourth one the university has produced. So that was amazing to see too. But honestly, being at HBCU, it truly feels like every single day is just something amazing is being accomplished by someone Black, whether it's just out in the world or within the university in general. So honestly, it just I can't even say Black History Month necessarily feels like any different than any other month. Not to say there aren't like special celebrations, obviously there are, but I feel like it's constantly going on, just being the fact that it is an HBCU. But I think to me, Black History Month, like someone else said, it's one of my favorite months. Sadly, it's the shortest month, but still one of my favorite months because Black history truly is American history. And I think that it's also important to note that our support of just Black achievements and contributions and just people in general extends beyond this month. Because sometimes I think for a lot of corporations, it's okay, it's Black History Month, and then it goes silent until it's Black History Month again, and then it goes silent. So I think that's also very important, just continuously just celebrating Black people and Black achievements, and also just taking this time to educate yourselves on all the different forms and variations of Blackness. I think sometimes during Black History Month, it's just, people they're just thinking, Black people, like we're all a monolith, like we were talking about before. But I think it's also a good time to dive into the different, just the diaspora in general. It's a diaspora. So there's Black people, really, we exist everywhere. So just taking time to learn about, the Black diaspora and also different, little intersectionalities within Blackness, Black people who are a part of the LGBTQ community, Black disabled people, just Black people who also are a part of these different communities, and taking time out of your day to learn about them. Because I know last year I created a Black History Month catalog for the Black Unity Club at Lowell High. And we used like members' responses, and we curated basically just a list of different songs and different books and different movies to celebrate Black History Month. And I think everyone really enjoyed it because we tried to really be diverse with the different music and books we were recommending. So I think Black History Month it's a really important time. I think it's a great time for people not to look towards Black people to educate them, but to also just educate themselves and take the time out of their days to do that. So I think this month is it's a really good time. It's a needed time. It's not a long enough time, but I think it's a very good time.
I feel like Matt could have been the moderator for this. Matt, you're phenomenal. I really am looking forward to see what you become and what you do, and whatever you choose is going to be is you're going to excel in. I will just say this, and then I'm going to kick it back to either Latifa or whomever. This has been such an honor for me. I love being Black. I talk about about it all the time. I would not want to be anything other than Black. And I just want, for all the people who are watching or who will watch this later, understand there is such, and Matt just spoke to it, we're not a monolith. There's so much diversity in what Blackness is, so much beauty in the lightest hue to the deepest melanin. We are beautiful, we're divine, we're worthy, we're intelligent. There's just so much that we can impart and that we have imparted to this country. And I think that, and I have said this before, if you want to know about Blackness or Black history, read it. And I don't say that disrespectfully. I say that because I was forced to look at European history for over 12 years, because even when I went to college, they wouldn't let me take a different history before I took European history again. So again, recognize that there is such power and such allyship potentially if you're willing to do the work. I will say this, you know, a lot of people talk about, I want to be an ally, you know, I'm an ally. Understand what an ally really means. An ally means that you will willingly enter into spaces where people that look like me are not welcome, are not, or where power is controlled and kind of distorted to maintain that power. And you're willing to put yourself in that space to pull me into it. Okay, so again, recognize what that means, because you can either be allies or it can be all lies. So you have to decide, you know, what side of that spectrum that you fall on. But I welcome you to learn about Blackness, because it's fun and we're kind of amazing people. So with that, I will kick it back to Latifah. Again, my pleasure. And I hope to be able to represent not just the school committee well, but the Black people will look at this, and the young Black boys and girls will recognize that they too can enter into a space and hold space for other people.
Thank you so much, school committee member Stacey Thompson. And I know you don't like formalities, but as I said, it means a lot to me and to many to see you in your role and to be championing equity, you know, and diversity, inclusion, you know, across the board for all of our students. So thank you for your voice. And to our committee members, it's not easy to come and speak publicly about your experiences. So I do want to acknowledge your courage for speaking out, and that it means, again, a lot to me to hear you share your stories. And it even helps me to draw courage from that as well. So thank you, all three of you. And I also want to give my staff a shout out and acknowledgement. Our equity office is a new office. Rosa and Vanak are pillars within that office. I want everyone to know them and to know that when you work with either of them, that they come with heart, they come with skill, they come with compassion to serve you know, all members of our community truly. And so I'm so thankful to have both of them on our district team. So please do know them, reach out to them. And we will be doing a report on the culturally and linguistically sustaining practices for our district in the coming weeks. We are hearing you. So when you see that report coming out, and I'll do a good job, I'll do a better job to reach out to you so you're providing that input. But I want you to know that your voices do matter and count, and this is your district. So we're going to do a better job to make sure it reflects the needs of our children. So thank you, everyone, and we will see you hopefully at our Learn session. Our Learn session facilitated by Executive Director Krista Brown with Free Soil. Learn some of the history of Black people in Lowell, the history of Black Lowell. So we'll make sure you get that link. So Rosa or Vanak, I don't know, we're over time, but I just want to give you a second if you have anything to say.
I just, you know, second you, Latifah, and thanking our panelists and thanking Stacey for being here and sharing their stories and their experiences. They were very powerful, and we definitely need to continue sharing these so that we can make headway and really create a more equitable system here in Lowell, which I think, you know, we are the city of innovation, and we have so much promise here, so we can do it together as a whole community. Thank you.
I just want to thank all of our panelists tonight for having the courage to speak your truth in front of our audience. And thank you, Ms. Thompson, for hosting and moderating. Just as a Lowellian and someone who's gone through Lowell Public Schools, it's taken too long to have as much diversity as we do in leadership positions, but the time is now, and the time is going to be in the future too. So thank you, Ms. Phillips, and thank you, Ms. Thompson, for everything that you do.
All right, have a good evening, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.